and go live. And screen share the screen. Got it. And you should see my ad spot, Randy. Hey, you're on lunch conversations with Randy and Teddy. And those who don't know, I'm Teddy, and my good buddy over there is Randy. Our special guest today is Liz Summers out of Nazareth, Pennsylvania, where it's just about a little chillier than it is here in Winston-Salem. Hey, Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored in part by the elder law firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. They help you stay focused and delivering on the commitments that you make to your loved ones. So if you have family or friends that need help with estate planning or elder care planning, reach out to the elder law firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, elderlawfirm.com, 336-396-4551. And look, let them know that Randy told you to call. So
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So you doing all right, buddy?
I am, Teddy. So did you introduce yourself already? Because, well, I don't need to stall for time. I'm so clever now. Did
you make it happen, buddy?
I did in record time, by the way. In record time. Yeah, Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, based in Winston-Salem. I have clients across the country. I run our professional center. So if you are watching, or maybe you know somebody that could use a little help with that job hunt, that's what I do, and we're happy to help. But I get together a couple of times a week. We're free, by the way, so that's a nice thing. But a couple of times a week, I get together with this character in red over here, and we bring in a special guest and have a lot of fun and learn a few things along the way. So, Teddy, let me throw it back to you. And just so you know, folks, if you'd like to have a comment or question for Liz, we certainly want to have you put that in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that and try to work that in as we can. So, Teddy, over to you.
Should we wait a few minutes, Randy? Because Don went to the kitchen to get a bowl of chili. I'm hoping he's gotten back.
we hope so. We hope so.
For those who've never met me, I'm Teddy. I run an organization called Burriss Consulting. We teach LinkedIn as a business tool. We teach Google Workspace as business tools. I love to help corporations, individuals, anybody who wants to figure out how to make these business tools work better for them. But a couple times a week, Randy and I get together, and every Wednesday, we know this show is successful, clearly not because of Randy and I, but instead because of our special guests, because that's how Randy, we talked about this, man. It ain't you and me, our audience shows up to hear our special guests. And today we have Liz Summers out of Pennsylvania, organization that she has created is Advanced Leadership Consulting. Liz, would you do me a favor and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thanks for the invitation. I'm Liz Summers. I'm president and founder of my firm, Advancing Leadership Consulting, which I formed 14 years ago now, which is hard to believe. And I'm a leadership development facilitator and coach. So I work with both individuals and groups to help improve team dynamics and communication and help people become more self-aware of their strengths so they can leverage them. And I'm also a published author. I was part of a collaborative book project last month that just launched. So excited to be part of Standing Out. So that's probably the newest thing. But yes, so that's me.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. Yeah. And you and I discussed a little bit about, the kinds of topics that we could have, the conversation that you and I could have on this show. And I mean, it was pretty diverse. We could go lots of different spaces. But I think it was because the time when you and I got together, I had a friend who was struggling. And he was struggling because he really had so much on his plate. He was so overwhelmed with all the things he had going on that he was not taking care of himself. And it was scary, really scary. And so we decided to have a conversation about self-awareness and self-care. But before we get into that conversation, Randy, do you want to hit Liz up with your question?
I have a question for Liz, but I also have a question for you, my friend. You, Teddy, are now seated. So where did you find room in the budget for a chair? That's what I'm wondering. You've changed your setup there. The background thing you've got, that's a little different kind of. And so you're moving up in the world.
So Lunch Conversations of Randy and Teddy is not funding this change.
Okay,
Burriss
well,
Consulting is, there is more to come, buddy. So I decided to
deal.
change up my desk. I'm gonna get one of those elevator desks, you know what I'm talking about, that goes up and down.
pretty fancy stuff, man.
Yeah, fancy
Rocking
stuff. And my interior decorator is gonna help me figure out what to do with this mess behind me
Good.
to change it all up. So yeah, and this is not a new shirt. This is a shirt from last year. So just an
Okay.
FYI.
Liz Summers joins us from Pennsylvania, and I always ask the why question. And the fact that you've been doing this for 14 years, if you weren't into it and really digging it, you would have bailed a long time ago. So, and I can see by the smile on your face, you really enjoy what you do. There's probably a series or maybe a single moment in your life that you said, wow, this is for me. This is what I want to be doing. What's your why?
You know, that's a great question. And I think everybody should always ask themselves that, right? What's your why? I think for me, I love to help people.
Yeah.
I love to help people. And I think with leadership and self-awareness, when I see that aha moment, when something clicks, either with an individual or a team, that is so incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
I think the first moment that from this perspective for this, it began, I lived prior to relocating to the Lehigh Valley in 2018. I was in Greensboro for almost 30 years. So very much a big part of that community. And I participated in Leadership Greensboro, one of the best programs. Often, I'm sure there's Leadership Winston-Salem and High Point, fabulous programming that chambers across the country do. And I remember being a participant and watching our two facilitators thinking, I want to do that. I want to help with that. So that was one of the first things that clicked for me. And I've just been going ever since.
Yeah, cool.
Good deal. Yeah, I've got a lot to cover. By the way, once again, if you have a comment or question for Liz, you want to join in the conversation with that, I'll try to work those in, but we'll throw it over to Teddy and we'll get this started. Teddy?
Yeah. Did you pay Lynn to post that positive comment about you?
No, but I guess I should now. Huh? Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, we do good work at Goodwill, and you know, we kind of fly under the radar, quite frankly. You don't associate professionals getting help at Goodwill, but I run our professional center, been doing it for a long time. Happy to help. So yeah, enough about me. Let's fire this thing up. There's a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn, by the way.
So Liz, self-awareness and self-care.
Yeah.
Help me break that down. What do you mean when you say self-awareness?
Sure. I think self-awareness is, knowing yourself. And what does that, breaking that down? I think it's paying attention to how you feel, what energizes you, what drains you. It's being aware. A lot of times we're in such an urgency-based culture, right? We just go, 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 go. And I think we've all had instances maybe where you hit a wall or something like that. So self-awareness is paying attention, really, but that's in all areas of your life. And a lot of it is tuning in, paying attention to what stresses you out, what brings you joy, what lights you up. Is a lot of that. And I feel like you need to have that self-awareness to know what's the best self-care for yourself, to know where your limits are and things of that nature. I know you mentioned, when we were talking before, we've all had different periods in our life where maybe we're just go, go, go. I had that experience back in 1999. I was leaving a job. There was, my parents were dealing with a hurricane. I did a breast cancer walk, the Avon breast cancer walk. And on the final day, I literally physically hit a wall and I had to go to the hospital and was hospitalized for a couple of days for dehydration. I did not know how to slow down. I did not know as type A, go, go, go. So I think most of us may have had one of those moments. Hopefully not. Hopefully this helps prevent someone from having that, but just understanding kind of what's too much for you, or what you need more of and things of that nature. So self-care is how do you charge that battery, this battery, how do you charge it both mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever that might be for somebody.
Yeah. Self-awareness, I can remember a period in my life way back when I was nonstop. I thrived on the fact that there were two phones on my desk. I had a cell phone and I had a work computer, and I had another device. I can't remember what it is. Oh, I had a pager.
Right.
And, for me, I thrived on the fact that these things went off all the time. I mean, it just consumed me. But then I remember that I ended up in an emergency room and thinking I was having a heart attack.
Yeah. Gosh,
And
I'm
I mean, I'm thinking I'm dying,
right.
and I'll never forget the words from the doctor when he interviewed me for why I was having this situation, which was purely stress. It was not a heart attack. And he said to me, this was a warning.
Yes.
He said, change your life or your life will change.
Oh, I haven't heard that phrase. That's
He
really
said,
good.
change your life or your life will change.
Well, Oprah talks about, Oprah Winfrey talks about, we get these little nudges, we get these pebbles, and then maybe we get rocks. And if we still don't pay attention, we get a brick. And then if we don't pay attention, we eventually hit a brick wall, and our bodies will give out on us if we don't, pay attention. We do get those warning signs. So, so I'm sorry that happened, and hopefully the gifts that came from it.
But sometimes that's the trigger that we need. We need a little bit more than a pebble. And so that we will stop and do something to provide ourselves with self-care.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about self-care. Just give you a little bit more insight on your thoughts about, what does it mean? And I like you and I chat about this, about put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Right. We always think about that. And I think, a lot of us, most of us wear many hats, certainly, right? Whether, we're business people, but we're also parents or children or siblings, or, we have caregivers, we have lots of roles. And so that old adage does apply, because if I don't have anything to give you, then that's not helpful, right? Sort of like someone also told me, my friend Alicia talked about a cup. We often talk about making sure our cup is full. Well, make sure the cup is full and that you have the overflow to give to others, because the cup has to be full in order to do that. And I think a lot of it is paying attention to what gives you energy and what drains your energy. We all have to do things that drain our energy, right? We all have to. Life is that way. But trying to really tap into what gives us energy. I love it. My daughter talks about her social battery. And she'll say, after she's had, a couple different functions or whatever, she'll say, my social battery is depleted. Yeah. Well, she needs to pay attention to that, because if she doesn't, she's going to run herself ragged and it's too much. Yeah. And so I like that image of kind of us as batteries, and paying attention to what gives us energy, paying attention both to the time of day. Like, I'm a morning person. I have a dear friend who's an evening person. So our emails cross. She's emailing me at 11 o'clock when hopefully I've been to bed, for an hour or two. And then I'm emailing her back at 5:30 or 6. Doesn't say I can't function at those other times, but it's about paying attention to what works.
Yeah, I get that. You don't take email after midnight?
I'm not paying attention to email after midnight. I can promise you that. Well, and I think you raise a good point, though. There's this expectation, technology is wonderful, right? Mm-hmm. It's great to be connected all the time, and yet anything can be overdone. And certainly that's an example. So hopefully, if you're a leader in your organization or even of your team, to not set that, people need downtime. We're humans. We need downtime. And if you're constantly connected, it's just not healthy. It's just not healthy in the long run. We can certainly all do that for bursts of time, but chronically, that's not healthy.
No. One thing you got me thinking a little bit, that with remote work, for those who are night owls and would rather work from home in the evening when they feel like they're more productive, technology allows for that. And as long as the company says, hey, let's get our work done, then that allows some flexibility versus saying you've got to be at the office at 7 a.m, right, or that kind of a thing. So it does lend a little bit of help, I guess, for those that are on a different internal calendar, maybe.
Yeah, I think, and hopefully, depending on your situation, I think, like for me, I think it's about, okay, I'm a morning person. So if I have a big nut that I've got to crack today, I've got something that really is intense, I need to focus on it in the morning. So if best I can, like for me, I'm in communications because, for instance, finance is not my thing, right? My brain, accounting, it's just not, I can do some of it. And as a small business owner, I certainly have to. I outsource to an accountant the things I don't know how to do. But when I'm doing finances or real data review, as I may do from time to time, I'm intentional about it. I have to do it in the morning. I have to really get rid of my distractions. sessions, and I'm going to be tired afterwards. Whereas when I'm doing the things, I just taught an in-person class on Monday, was all day. Sure, I was tired by the end of the day, but I was energized by it.
Yeah.
So it's not to say you can't do those other things, but it's about being intentional about the things that maybe need more energy or focus, and doing them when you have that best focus as best you can. Obviously, we can't always schedule it that way, but I really try to focus that way when I can.
But Liz, we all have to figure out a way to care for ourselves. Is there not a freaking book we can read that just tells us the 5 things we need to do every day to take care of ourselves? Please.
I think I bet if I walked into the bookstore, we could find a whole section, right? So I don't know that there's one book on that. We do know that we have our basic needs. We need to have our basic needs met. Sleep is not a luxury. Sleep is a necessity for humans. That's when our bodies reset, right? And we need that. We need food. We need water, right? We are creatures in community. We don't do well in isolation, right? So there's some basics there. And then beyond that, it's making sure, what works for you, and it's different, for everyone. So I think that's the gift in that, right? That there's not, oh, I have to do these 5 things, right? It's different. I mean, there's some basics that we need to do. And, with technology, I don't know where but we're so connected.
Well, did you just say you don't know where your cell phone is?
No, I put it over there because I want to make sure it didn't make any noise during our, it's not in the same room with me. Can you believe it? I know, it's possible.
Wow. She's impressive. I'll tell you, a phone out of arm's reach. That is unheard of today.
I invite everyone to try. It's interesting. It's so hard to unplug. Used to be years ago when my parents, they lived out of the country. And when I would go, I would have my cell phone, but I couldn't do texting or call. I didn't have an international plan at the time. So there was none of that. And I have to tell you, that was my favorite week of the year, not only because I got to see my family, but I was truly checked out. At the end of the day, I could go check my email, respond to anything, but I did not, there were no notifications and for a week, and the world kept spinning and everything was okay. That's much harder to do when you're here in it, I find. But I relished that time because it is important to deconnect when we can.
We have a rule. Today, there are 5 people in my home. And the rule that we have, sort of not hard and fast, but it's a very well adopted rule, is no devices to the dinner table.
Right. That's a great one. That's a great one.
And so, but I sneak in this.
They haven't figured that out. Listen, if you have young people in the house, they'll catch on to that very quickly. Let me tell you.
Joking. But that's important because, I mean, that's the one time of the day where a family can gather as a family and not as a family with all these hooks into everything else that's going on.
Sure. And have real conversation, right? And it's not, I don't know how long your family's dinners go. Sometimes it might be 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes it might be longer. It's okay. Right. And I think it's that reminder, and it's just, to really tap in. And also, it's not until we slow down and maybe don't have all those distractions, that's when you can pay attention to what's going on. Wow, I'm really tired, or wow, something's really bugging me, or I really, that's where you're going to tap into those dreams that you have, those aspirations you want, until you have some space for that. So, it's hard to be able to pay attention.
Yeah.
I have a question here. And so it may seem very simplistic, but then again, I'm a simple guy.
Randy.
Right. How do I know if I'm a morning person or an evening person? Or, I mean, what if I just bump through life? I mean, are there indicators? What tells me that maybe I'm just lazy? I don't know. But I mean, how do I know if I'm a morning guy or an evening guy? Realistically, it sounds basic, but how do you know that?
I think it's a great question. I don't have a 1, 2, 3 quiz for you, although that would be easier, right? And I think there's some people that, are fine either way. I think part of it is you find out where your energy comes from. The friend who I spoke of, her name's Rita, who stays up, later, an 8 a.m. breakfast meeting. It's just really, she can do it, but she'll admit it's really hard. She doesn't think as well, it takes her a little while to get warmed up and what have you. Whereas it's where are you in your flow? Where do you feel your best, right? Where are you sharpest? If you have to tackle something big, would you rather do it in the morning, in the middle of the day, in the afternoon? It's paying attention to those kinds of things and just paying attention to where you feel your best, I think. Now, if you're feeling great all the time, all day, then that's awesome. You may not, I don't think you have to be either morning or evening. Yeah, I don't think you have to be morning or evening. I just think that's where a lot of us fall. And I think it's just, you can tell by how you feel at the time. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's a great answer, but
it is. And here's, I'll help you with this answer.
Okay.
Look, and I'm looking at my cell phone while Liz is talking to measure when Randy is, more engaging. Most of the time when you call me, dude, it's after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You never call me in the morning. I'm looking. For the most part, I have not found. And
because I sleep till noon, Teddy.
Oh, okay,
don't tell my boss that, but
right. We won't let that out.
No,
yeah, look and see when you call people. That's one thing to look at. And I'm with you. Look, Liz, for the longest time, I've discovered I cannot produce a video, which is how I make my $16 million a year. I cannot produce, in my mind, produce a video first thing in the morning.
Sure. And that's okay. Whereas, like I would love nothing better to roll out of bed and grab some breakfast and get right to it. Like I'm ready to go. So part of it is paying attention. If it takes you, longer to, or you really are that night owl and you do your best work. It's kind of, where do you do your best work? When are you, once I get to the end, I've learned too, I don't answer, well, there's a family rule that I don't make any decisions after 9 o'clock. We don't make any decisions after 9 o'clock. It's not that urgent because I'm not at my best. And I tried to not text, email, do anything because I make mistakes, because I'm at the end of my day. I'm not at my best self. So I try not to. And my daughter will say, we have a 15-year-old daughter say, oh, Dad, can we do it? It's after 9 o'clock. Talk tomorrow. I can't. I'm not going to make that decision now. And it works pretty well.
Randy, remember that the next time we need something from Liz.
Right.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I know you sort of said it kind of a fun way, but I think it's, when do you feel kind of the most alive and in your groove to do the things that, and also part of it, that self-care is, what do I need to do to feel that way, whether I'm a night person or, so making the connection, but you got to pay attention first.
Well, for me anyway, and for me, it's, I guess if I had to say one of the two, I'm a morning guy, because I've always gotten up early and, I'm not a TV guy. I really don't care. So all that stuff to me is just inane crap. And I don't want to mess with it. So I'd rather go to bed and get some sleep, but it's the chicken or the egg. So bear with me for a second. I love the kind of stuff we're doing right now. I could do this all day and do it 24/7 and never sleep and, whatever. Right. So I love doing it. That energizes me. Now, I could do what I do right now at 10 or 11 at night because it energizes me. Even though I may be a morning person, if I have to sit and stare at Excel or something like that, I'm going to feel drained like Teddy right now listening to me. And so it's as much for me, the activity that breeds that enthusiasm and gets the juices going. I don't know if that makes sense with what I'm saying. So for me, it's more the activity versus the time of day that I feel at my best. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Same with me. Like if you put me, I'm very much a people person. If you put me at the end of the hall, I don't care what time of day it is, and I'm doing data analysis for 8-10 hours, it's not going to work well. I'm not going to be good at it. Yeah. I know that if I'm going to do it, I'll do it better in the morning. So it's not to say you can't. And like you said, I think what energizes you, that helps. If I have to have a speaking engagement in the evening, I can ramp up for that. I can do that, but by about, but it's because it energizes me, but that's it's not something I'm able to do long-term all the time, or I prefer not to.
So this is important, Liz. And this is really important. And by the way, Randy, I was yawning because you were talking about doing stuff that I don't want to do either. But and you and I are two peas in a pod, buddy. Stop it. Because you and I, we get fueled by the opportunity to have a conversation. I don't care. I do work in Australia at midnight. Okay, midnight, which is the middle of the day in Australia. You guys know that the sun is down there and we're up here, and it does like this. And that's how you get 12 hours. It's weird, but anyway, I can be up at midnight and I can be having a conversation with a client, and I don't care what time it is. It doesn't make any difference to me. But think about this: for people in business who have to go talk with a client, for people who are in job search who have to get an interview, you need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to when are we at our peak for those types of conversations. If you're miserable in the morning because you got a lumpy mattress, daggone well, you better not schedule an interview or a client meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. Because you're not, what's the ad, Randy? Did you get a good night's sleep in that hotel, whatever it's called? Or all the
Holiday
way around.
Inn. Yeah.
All the way around. If at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're drained, then you better ask for a 8 o'clock in the morning interview or an 8 o'clock in the morning client meet.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. Exactly. And it doesn't always happen, right? So we sometimes have to make that 4 o'clock or the 8 a.m. work, obviously. When we have a choice, and it's also about how we communicate with others, our coworkers, right? And how do we communicate? I don't need to have if I can avoid it, a really hard conversation or difficult conversation, as someone's walking out the door at, 5 o'clock on a Thursday, right? I'm going to be better. I'm going to be able to manage my emotions better. I'm going to be able to think more broadly. When we get stressed, I don't know about any of you, but most of us, we kind of get blinders on and we don't show up as our best selves. We don't communicate effectively. A lot of things go down. So part of it is, it's also like asking someone, do you prefer to communicate by email, by phone, by Zoom? What does, especially with clients or a coworker or people texting each other in cubicles right next to each other, right? Just come talk to me. That would be easier. So part of it is letting people know, what do I prefer? What's your communication style you prefer? What's my communication? I would prefer to talk this way. And that has to do with our different styles, how we show up, whether we're analytical, whether we're more expressive. And so it's tapping into that so that I can leverage that and be the best, whatever that I am, communicate effectively, get my job done.
Yeah. My boss is 8 feet away from me right now, directly below me. She just sent me a text message.
There you
go.
And
And Todd also offered that, we need to, in this self-awareness, when do we thrive in a seasonal perspective? Are we more, engaging and love to be with people during the summer? Or do we hate to be out with people in the summer and prefer to be with them in the winter? Not that you can hibernate, Todd, you can't hibernate, dude, but you can pay attention to, how do I best engage with humans in these seasons?
Right. And like, I know for me, I love to be outside, right? And I also don't love winter. So I've had to find a way to make those two work together, right? And I know that when I move my body, I feel better, right? So as someone said, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. And so I've learned to, if you wear the right clothing, even if it's really cold outside, you can do it and, and not be miserable, hopefully. So it's knowing that about yourself, knowing that I know that I don't do well doing a yoga class on my own, a yoga at home on my own. I love doing yoga. If I have an accountability partner, if I have to show up somewhere, I'm much more successful. So it's knowing things like that, both in our work, and maybe I need an accountability partner for something, or maybe, hey, we've got a really big strategy meeting. Let's find a time that works for everybody. 2 o'clock is that part of that day where I kind of dip. So I'm going to try not to do an interview. Maybe I've had to facilitate at that time of day. So I make adjustments. I flex so that I can be my best.
We had a question and sort of a comment question in the chat area.
Give me a second, Randy.
Yeah, you had halfway.
Bottom of the hour, man. We and then we'll get to that because Scott threw out some good stuff. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Our special guest today is Liz Summers. Another example of Randy and I bringing people who are smarter than us to the show. The Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. They're what's important to you and how you plan to honor your responsibilities to that older generation is important to the Elder Law Firm as well. So reach out to them if you need help with helping your family or friends with estate planning or elder care planning, or those 7 documents. I just keep reiterating the importance of those 7 documents. The Elder Law Firm, Greensboro, North Carolina, 336-396-4551. And let them know that today you saw me in bright red, and I encourage you to call them. Randy, back to you, buddy.
Whoa, a little twisting it up there.
Twist, man. It's a
little
twist.
twist there. All right. So this one may be, this is, I'll throw under the get it done now. I used to have a boss when I started my career in recruiting. He would always say, do it now. If you're thinking about it, do it now. Don't put it off. We're in a now business, make things happen. And Scott's one of our regular attendees, and he kind of touched on that. He's, I guess, of the mind that says, hey, you know what? Let's put the nose to the grindstone. Let's get it done tonight, because you never know. Maybe tomorrow something else comes up, and now our plans get waylaid. Versus other people who can shut it off and say, we'll just pick it up tomorrow. I don't know if that's as much is it a personality quirk, if you will, a personality trait? Does it have to do with time of day? Just, you want to talk about that? Sure.
And I appreciate the comment. And I think, like you say, recruiting, that's a very intense, urgent. I mean, that's an urgent, my husband was a recruiter for years, so I understand, appreciate, I haven't done it myself, but just observing. I think industry, it depends. And there's a lot to say about do it not now and not procrastinate. And I think because that causes more headaches for us later. So I do hear that. At the same time, I think it can be a this and that, yes, it's much more efficient. I rather than piling stuff at the bottom of the stairs, just take it up. Or if I've got to do that email, just stop what I'm doing, send it out and be done. So I do think there's a balance there. I think the question becomes when do it now is the only way to go all the time, because we can't do it all. We can't do it all. We'd love to. We can do it all, just not at the same time, perhaps. So I don't know. I'd be interested in other people, what you two think about that. I do think there is a lot to the credence of do it now. At the same time, you can't have everything be urgent and important. Not everything can be urgent and important. You've got to prioritize, and there has to be a time where you're able to cut it off. It's hard, and some of us are wired, and it is harder to cut off. I totally agree. I used to have a much harder time doing that. And then, though, you're able to sort of see, okay, there has to come a stop, because if not, your body's going to stop you.
Yeah, my wife, mother/teacher, tries to do it all. Example, when she's moving from one room to the next to take something from here to here, if along the way she sees something that needs to be done, she'll do that on her way to here. Now, the satirical side of me will remind her that by the time she does all those things, she forgets why she's over there. But I didn't say that out loud, so don't call me out on
I was going to say that's sort of the squirrel, because you can get easily distracted, right? And it's interesting. I just, David Crenshaw has a book called The Myth of Multitasking, and it's scientifically proven that we don't multitask well. We think we do, but that when we multitask, we actually lose the quality of our work. We lose time, and we add more stress. So we think we're doing a good job, but not, I don't know that I'm convinced.
I'll compare that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy.
I'll compare that to a computer. There's only so much memory in there. And if you've got a gazillion tabs open and you're bouncing back and forth, that's sort of like your mind when you're trying to multitask. And the computer can only handle and process so much stuff at one time. Maybe it's better to limit the number of items, work those on through, and then come back to something else.
Randy doesn't know this, or maybe he does know this, that I used to have 24 tabs open all the time. And if I'm in one thing working and I got to go somewhere else, then I may go look at those other tabs and see if there's something I need to do along the way. Now, just like I jokingly said about my wife, by the time I get to the tab where I have something I know I need to do, I done forgot what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So Liz, what I've done is I have a new rule: no more than 12 tabs open. And 12 seems like a lot, but I used to have 20.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I now control it a little bit better.
I think that's more like me. That's probably how many I have open on a regular basis. So I'm right there with you. Yeah. And I'm certainly not perfect. I try to multitask. I get distracted just like everybody else. And there's a great another podcast. Brene Brown interviewed a woman with a book called Peak Mind, Dr. Ja. And she talks about our focus and attention is like a flashlight. You can only flash it one place at a time. And if you're going like this all the time, it's chaotic and crazy, right? So, all that to say, we try to find, be aware of what our strengths are and leverage them. Let's do more of that. If you're an outgoing person, you need to be at the front of the house, right? You need to be, greeting people at an event or something like that. If that's the last thing you want to do, we don't need to put you up front and center, right? So it's not that you can't be successful in that, but it's going to drain your energy. You're not going to enjoy it as much, and you're not going to be as competent perhaps as someone who really enjoys doing that. Make sense?
Yeah, there's a comment. Mike, by the way, Mike took on a new job, Teddy. You knew that? Did you know that?
I don't know that I know about Germany, so I need to reach out to him and have a conversation.
Yeah. So,
hey,
Mike,
Randy, is that one of our somebody in our audience from the furthest away? Is Germany as far
I think
as
you win
done?
the Man Mile Award for today's show. So Germany takes it. Teddy, tell him what he's won. Anyway,
Mike, you have won a used face mask.
hey, we spare no expense. But here's the question he has, and this gets a little off track from the morning day, but I think it still is relevant.
Sure.
And that is, we all operate at different levels, different speeds, different levels of caring and commitment. A good example is in baseball, why it could be very difficult for a Hall of Fame great baseball player to be a good manager. And a lot of times because again, they're used to performing up here and this level of commitment, and they're dealing with others who may be down here. And how do they relate to those folks? Same thing in business. Hey, let's promote the top sales guy to sales manager.
Yeah.
Bam.
It happens all the time.
Yeah,
right,
it does. And
right.
so that's his question, is how do we balance, let's say, a manager with a strong drive who has folks that report to him that may be in that quiet quitting mode or, whatever, just sort of flopping through life a little bit. How do you get those two to quit doing this and play well together? Any ideas?
Right. I think that's excellent. And that's what I love. That's what I love the most is helping. I use a lot of DISC products and different assessments because part of it not only is to know how you are. If you're a driver and you're a bottom line and let's get her done, that's great. Other people, it's helpful to know that about yourself, but it's also helpful to understand if someone of a different style doesn't see it that way. They see it as someone who's blunt, who's rude, who's pushy, who doesn't care, is totally just about the job and doesn't care about the people, perhaps, right? That could be.
Right.
So it's understanding that. And so when you know that and you're dealing with someone who's different, how do I I'm not asking anyone to change who they are, but if I know that about myself, consider my audience, and maybe I flex it a little bit. I don't change who I am. I'm still going to be driving. I'm still going to be this way. Perhaps though, the way I communicate with this person or the time I communicate with this person, this driver wants it done yesterday. Maybe there's someone that's working on the analysis that wants a whole nother week. Well, we don't have that, but we also can't do it yesterday. They want to make sure the information is accurate. They need more time. So it's talking about deadlines prior to coming up against it, right? And expectations. So when you know that, not only about yourself, but how you're perceived, you can flex more easily to other people to ultimately communicate more effectively, to ultimately be more successful. Makes sense? I don't know if that answered the question.
It does. It's a tough one because we're dealing with humans. And
of course,
some humans wake up on the wrong side of the bed 7 days a week.
What day it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Randy, you just use a phrase that we all use. We all use this phrase, dealing with people. And I don't know where I heard this or read it somewhere. It could have been a Brene Brown podcast. It could have been a Masters of Scale or Hidden Brain. The word dealing. When we use the word dealing with people, it has such a different connotation than dealing with tasks. It's just something I'm playing with. Randy, I drive Randy crazy because I do this wordsmithing stuff all the time. But
It's a negative connotation for sure. Dealing with it's a negative connotation.
Yeah, it's as if you have to deal with someone. Well, it's interesting. And Adam Grant talks about it in his book, Think Again, about relational versus task conflict.
Yeah.
And a task conflict, it's just about the job. It's just about the work, the project, whatever. It's much easier to address that and resolve it. Once it gets relational, which is more about interpersonal stuff, it's a lot harder to you can still resolve it. It's just, it's a little more difficult most of the time, because that relational it's people and people. So the more I like to think of self-awareness as kind of the key to it's the cheat sheet, or the key to the treasure chest, so that I can be my best and I can interact with other people more effectively. And that way hopefully then it becomes more collaborating with people instead of dealing with people.
Yeah. And I'm with you. And I'm again, I use the same word all the time. And I know now, as Randy and I have used these words, I don't know, all these people are getting old around me, and I must be subscribing to their philosophies along the way. But, I'm realizing the words I use with people. It's another one of these self-awareness things, Liz. I got to be aware of not only taking care of my physical body, which is absolutely a phenomenal trophy to anybody, but I also got to pay attention to the mental self and the way I present myself to people, including my words. And so that's one of the things I'm looking at. Self-awareness is way more than just, one aspect of our lives. It's all the aspects.
Absolutely. And we're dealing with other people. I mean, most of us, we're in relationship, whether it's our coworkers who we're seeing, whether it's through the screen, in person, over the phone. Those interactions matter. Yeah.
And we're not going to call out the person who in the chat, which we all can see, or actually only Randy, Liz, and I can see it. Smart guy. Oh, maybe it's a guy who said, my wife is satisfied if dinner gets on the table, even if half of it's missing. He says, to me, it's worth doing if it's doing it right, if it's worth doing. We're not going to call him out, because Lord help him if his wife finds out he wrote that.
Well, and I think it's different perspectives, right? So it's appreciating each side and understanding. And so whether it's in a working relationship, a personal relationship, to have, to understand that, because a lot of times we always think it's the other person. And we also think they're the one with the issue, when it's just a chance to communicate. A lot of it's just because we approach it differently. And then we realize, oh, they're not really a jerk or a witch or whatever. Oh, okay. And that is tremendously helpful.
So wait a minute, are you telling me that it may be me in some situations?
I think it's important for us to look and see how we might contribute. Let's put it that way.
Randy, the consummate professional. All right, I got two big other questions I want to wrap up with, if we can get to both of them, Liz. And sort of along the lines of my satirical statement about I'm perfect and I do everything right and I know how to do everything and I don't need your freaking help. That's a poor mindset. Should we ask for help? Because I think we should.
I think our culture has made it common to feel like it's a sign of weakness to ask for help. And I would say, especially if you're a leader, it's a form of strength to say, I need help. And also you're giving the other person an opportunity, right? Whether it's whether you're delegating to someone else to let them help you with something, or just to say, I don't have all the answers. I have much more respect for a leader who says, I'm doing my best. I'm, doing the best I can. I don't know it all. I need help here. I may have told you before, I broke my shoulder a year ago. I needed help. I'm a very independent person. It was hard. I had to reach out to ask for people to help drive me to, my husband couldn't always do it. So who can help drive me to my PT appointments, or who can literally help me with meals? And it was hard to do. And it's also a gift. So if you think of it, we can't do it all. And I have more respect for people who actually are able to do that.
I'm with you. And again, back when you and I were talking, I had a personal friend who was struggling and he was not aware, and he didn't want to take care of himself. And he also didn't want to ask for help. And it took
it's okay. I mean, everybody, we can't go through this journey, this life's journey alone. We can't. We need each other. And I think if most people are willing to help. And if they can't help right now, maybe it's not right now, but most people do want to help. Yeah. And there are very few people that you say, I need help, that they're going to say, forget about it, right? Most of the time, people want to, maybe I don't have the answer for you, but I'm going to see how I can help you.
Yeah. And that goes across everything in life. I mean, in my business, I'm 14 years into it myself. And in my business, I think I know all the answers, but I now, not just now, but I now know I don't know all the answers. I don't know how to move to that next level in this respect, or how to make this solve this problem in this respect. And I also realize there's a lot of things that, as we talked about earlier, I know I should not be doing. Okay. I mean, if I was managing the P&L, Lord help us.
Well, and it's like, you could do it. It's probably going to take longer than someone who has those innate gifts or enjoys it more, right? So yeah, that's part of how we can't do it all. And I think if we think we do, that's where we can trip ourselves up, if we think we're doing it all.
And Scott said that. Scott dropped it in here, I need help, in bold letters. But then he said this. He said, I can admit. And when you can admit that you need help, that's the big hurdle, is just to do that.
Right. And almost always there's going to be someone there, that you'll get the help you need, but you got to ask for it. And it's okay to say, I have more respect for someone who says, I don't know. Now, if you just say, I don't know, and walk away, okay. But it's what you do with it. But I don't know, but let's find out together, or let me talk to Randy, or let me talk to Teddy and find out and come back.
Yeah.
So,
we run into that. I know I do anyway. That holds back job hunters. In fact, I had that conversation with three people in the last couple of weeks who have been on the fence about, should I let my network know that I'm looking?
Right. Because it feels vulnerable.
Yeah, it does. And there's downside to that potentially. And then of course there's upside to it. And everything in life, I guess you have to weigh the risk reward thing. But if you don't let people know or ask for help, you may be missing out on some pretty good advice, and who knows where that could lead. So yeah, that whole vulnerability part, I think, Teddy, we had a guest on a while back that talked about that. I have to go back and think about that a little bit. But part of I guess, and I'm kind of making this up as I go on from memory, but a good leader is vulnerable, and, like, to your point, will acknowledge that they may not have all the answers. That doesn't make them a bad leader. Yeah.
And certainly when you think about these last couple of years, when the pandemic hit, there was no expert on this. There was no one alive that could say, with our technology and our lives, to say, oh yeah, here's the checklist. Nobody had that, right? And it's okay. And I think that was a shift to show people that not to say we can't figure it out, we just don't know right now. And then that's okay.
We had Karen Sigmund Smith talk about wellness. And we also had Kelly, I'm gonna butcher her name, who was, she came and talked about gratitude is power. That was a pretty cool topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gratitude is a great tool that I think is underutilized. Yeah. And, same with just being appreciative. Absolutely. Because most of us, even on the darkest days, most of us can find 1, 2, 3 things to be grateful for. And science proves that gratitude is really powerful. So yes.
We had Melissa Hughes on a couple of times, and she's a neuro geek. Yeah, she's a doctor. I mean, she studies the brain, and just fascinating. But that's one of the things. How do you recharge and feel better? One was vitamin D, get outside in the sun. Yes. And also the whole gratitude piece. What are you thankful for? Real quick, Don had thrown a question in here asking you, Liz, about your clients. What are a couple issues that surface as priorities or baffle and frustrate your clients?
I think communication is one of the biggest ones, because people who can't communicate, they can't be efficient in things. Either two people are doing the same thing, or I think you're doing it and you think, and it falls through. So communication is a big one. I think people, so many people are short-staffed right now. So many people are trying to do more with less, which we've all done forever. But I think that's one of the things people need to stop and take a beat and appreciate the people that are with them, because thinking that we could always perform at this, things are different. And it's not to say you can't still perform at the same level, but the way we do it might be different. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing. And I think part of it is figuring out, like you said about getting outside, vitamin D, what works for you, what works for me may not work for you. I think getting outside is always good. I think that, like she probably said, that's good for everybody. Yeah. Is it reading? Is it yoga? Is it journaling? Is it talking to a good friend? Is it a favorite cup of tea? Is it whatever it is, find what fills your cup.
Yeah. Go back to the Brene Brown podcast. We were talking about Pink Mind.
Peak Mind, Peak, P-E-A-K.
Thank you. That's why Google didn't find it.
No, thank you. Peak Mind. Thank you for clarifying.
Cynthia, it's Peak Mind. Cynthia asked, "What's the name of the last book?" And it was you were talking about.
It's Peak Mind. And I want to say it's either Amishi or Dr. Amishi or Anishi Jha. I know her last name is J-H-A. And on her Dare to Lead podcast, she had her, and I just love thinking about the flashlight, because I tend to I like changes. I don't like to have the day be the same every day. And at the same time, that can get a little crazy. And if your flashlight's going like this all the time, no wonder we feel stressed and anxious and overwhelmed, right?
But I'm okay with that, Liz. No, I'm with you.
Hey, if it works for you, I'm for it. Whatever.
It doesn't. The reality is it doesn't. I may think it does, but the reality is it doesn't. I've discovered that life is a journey, not a race.
Yep.
I don't have to have it all done today, but I need to focus on what's important today that can move me forward, and put the other stuff, look, in front of me is a mess. It's an absolute mess, a pile of stuff, and you don't see it, you don't care. I think I care because it's there, but the reality is it's not a problem. I'll get to it when I get to it. So, all right, one last point.
Yes.
We got just a few minutes here.
Yep.
And I told you sort of kind of satirically, but a little bit of reality to it, that for me, the best way for me to relax after I've done everything I need to do at the end of the day, way before bedtime, is to go out on the patio with an appropriate adult beverage for me. A couple times a week, I'll sit out there with a cigar, and I'll either read a book or listen to a podcast. And Liz, that is, I was going to use the word heaven, but that's not the right word for me to use. That's fantastic for me. That's great. I mean, I am absolutely relaxed, and I don't drink for the sake of drinking. But I'll sit out there and listen to a book or Brene Brown or Masters of Scale. And I'm just in that space, and nothing else around me matters. That is as relaxing as I can get.
That's terrific. And I think that's the challenge for all of us. Is I challenge everyone, what is it for you? For me, it's a walk outside, or we have a state park really close by. If I can go even 30 minutes, for a walk and out in nature, or even just in my backyard, it's a huge game changer for me. So it's finding what works for you and trying different things, because what you said won't work for me, maybe, but something else.
And maybe, because by the way, I try to get out every morning for 30 minutes and do that 2-mile loop. And I like that in the morning. I don't like it in the evening. I like it in the morning. But my point is exactly what you said. You got to find that space.
Yeah, you do.
Otherwise, we only get one trip in this body.
Yep.
And when it's done, poof, it's done. And if we're not doing something to rejuvenate it, to relax it, to let it breathe, and it'll go over quick.
Yep, you're right. You're right.
Liz, there's a bunch of other things we could talk about. What we got to wrap up. Give me one really good, solid point that the audience needs to make sure that they heard.
I think what I would say is the quote by John Maxwell: to grow yourself, you must know yourself. Yeah. that comes to that, if you want whatever that growth is for you, right? Whatever that is, you got to know yourself. So to grow yourself, you must know yourself.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. And by the way, it can't be superficially knowing yourself. You got to honestly know yourself.
True. Good point.
I just know a guy, I'm speaking for a friend.
Well, that's a great point for the friend. It's a great point.
So thank you, Liz. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Hang
Liz.
tight while Randy and I wrap
Thank
this
you.
thing up.
Yeah.
Randy, what do you get a story, a thought?
I always make it up at the last. I have no idea. So here's one that did kind of come to mind, and whether it's Clifton Strengths Assessment.
Yep, that's a great one.
Knowing what are your strengths. Another guest we had in Abby Donnelly, maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, I love that.
I remember her giving a talk at a SHRM meeting years ago and talking about, imagine if as a kid, Tiger Woods, a prodigy golfer as a child, what if they said, okay, he's really good at golf, but let's teach him badminton because he's weak in badminton. So we're going to focus all of his training and attention in a weak area. And I think too often we focus on what we don't have or what we lack.
Absolutely.
And we try to be all things well-rounded in all things. But with Clifton Strengths, again, Malcolm McDougall was a guest in the past, and he'll be back on this coming year. The suggestion is, hey, let's understand what we're good at and really leverage that.
Exactly.
Because if we're always chasing our tail with stuff we're lousy at, we're always going to be frustrated because we're lousy at it, And if we get mediocre, I mean, what the heck? That's not going to do you any good. So seek, like you do, seek out the accountant to deal with the stuff that gives you a headache. Teddy, seek out whatever it is that gives you a headache. Make it happen. Don't always focus on what you don't have and try to beef that up. Look at what you're good at and leverage that, because that gives you energy. Yeah, you bet. It gives you energy, just like what we do today. I could do this stuff all day,
Right, right.
And it's just a fun thing. And when you can couple that fun with your work and having it add value to other people, Liz, I see you smiling. You get it. Teddy, you get it. We all dig this stuff, and we wouldn't be doing it.
That's the magic.
So we're in a good spot. Teddy, I'll throw it to you, and we've got a great guest coming up next week. It's going to be really cool too, by the way.
Oh yeah, a good friend of ours as well.
Yep.
It's going to be one of these a really cool conversations. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Hey, Lisa, good to have you on here. The quote that Liz referred to from John Maxwell is grow yourself, know yourself.
To grow yourself, you must know yourself.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Yep, yeah. To grow yourself. Actually, it's the very first quote that's in the book, my book section, that there are 28 of us featured in this book, and that's the very, very first line in here is that John Maxwell quote, because it's so true.
Yeah, really cool. So again, Liz, good stuff. I really appreciate it. Hey, well, the story I got is that there's lots of ways to self-awareness. I mean, I cannot express to you how this has changed my life. And it used to be, I'd look in the mirror and go, I can look in the mirror right here. Teddy, you're doing good, man. Keep going, dude. Keep plowing forward, dude. You're doing good. That's what I used to say to myself. Keep going, man. You're doing good. Keep going. And every now and then I say, hey, Teddy, you need to do it a little bit different. And it was self-awareness was me talking to myself. Mm-hmm. One of the ways I found to make self-awareness more powerful is I would listen to the words that people said to me about what I was doing or about me.
Very powerful.
Often, if you listen to the words they say and how they say these words, there's meaning to that. And that may be a way to figure out. I'll give you two examples.
Yep.
Example number one is when I was first starting out in the business world. I had 4 young daughters. I was traveling all the world. And one of my young daughters said to my wife, I don't like dad anymore. Now, why do they say that? I mean, I wasn't being a bully. I stopped locking them in the closet, and and I bought them food. And why do they say that? And I had to think through it. And my wife and I talked about it, and she said, it's you're bringing your work home. I was traveling all over the country. So I had to listen to that. I had to figure out how to resolve that, not deal with it, resolve it. The second thing is, I listened to what clients said to me. Teddy, you seem too busy. Teddy, I think you're really too busy. Teddy, I know you don't have time for me. You're too busy. I used to hear that years ago. And then I realized, wow, I'm not really making enough time to really care for people. I was rushing through sessions. And then I tried to figure out why. Why was I doing that? And the bottom line is I was trying to do too much. Listen to the words other people share.
Yeah.
That can be a powerful way for self-awareness. So
Agreed.
next week, Liz, again, thank you for showing up. Next week, Paul Jones will be on the show. It's all about cyber threats. It's not about if, it's about when. It's going to be a great conversation. And again, we're grateful for the Elder Law Firm for being sponsors of Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. We'll see everybody next Wednesday, 11:55. Take care.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Liz.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.